I'm Mike Wells, U.S. Air Force, retired 20 years, Lieutenant Colonel that flew F-15Es. I'm a Desert Storm veteran, flew sorties over Iraq, Operation Southern Watch, and also participated in Restore Democracy in Haiti. I've got a history. I'm a patriot. I'd love to fly in this airspace if it was approved. It would be a kick in the pants. It'd be a fighter pilot's best dream realized. But now I'm on the other side of the fence, and I'm looking at it from a different perspective. I look at this term EIS, and I see environmental impact statement or study. It does not appear to be a study because studies are backed up by facts. This EIS is wholly inadequate. It is a pre-foregone conclusion supported by misleading statements and incomplete data. The entire need is built upon the false statement that LOAT, Category 1, which is Low Altitude Training, Category 1, is essential to the combat mission readiness of pilots. The Cold War was won without the Condor MOA. This training has either been accomplished in other airspace throughout the United States and in the eastern United States, or it has been of such high importance that they've garnered a waiver, which in Air Force terms is, it's not really that important, you don't have to fill that square. The topics I'm going to discuss here in the next few minutes are the needs justification, the data deficiency in the report, and the safety aspects of the EIS. First off, the needs. The 102nd Fighter Wing out of Massachusetts is implicating itself if they have not accomplished this training that is so much needed for the past 15 years or so. Or how did they accomplish defeating the Soviet Union in the Cold War if they didn't have this training? They've accomplished this training down to 1,000 feet over the water. They have not accomplished the training square of down 500 feet over land. They've got a waiver for that. They've been very mission capable. It's a great unit. I used to fly with them when they flew A-10s. So also a question that has to be posed when we have this proposed need, how is it that the majority of the frontline active duty units accomplish this training, the Marines, Air Force, the Navy, without 500-foot airspace, such as the Condor MOA proposal? They do it down to 1,000 feet, and they do it over water, and they're very capable. So this need is an empty argument. The Readiness Aircrew Program requirements have existed for F-15s and other fighter aircraft for the past 15 years at least. The author of the EIS states that the deficiency of not having a suitable LOAT area degrades the unit's ability to provide 24-hour air defense alert. This is untrue. They get a waiver. They can still set alert. They can still accomplish the mission without the 500-foot qualification. It does not disqualify a pilot. Pat Welch, the director of the Air National Guard Airspaces and Ranges, said in a memo when there was the discussion about the justification statement for this airspace and the current airspace that was being used, he made the statement, change the less than optimum to insufficient, to strengthen the wording. My friends, I'm embarrassed at that as an Air Force officer. That is a breach of integrity when it is indeed not optimal, but a director wants to change it to insufficient, a totally different meaning. Let's talk about the baseline data. The baseline data talks about the square miles of airspace presently affected by low flies, and it also speaks of airspace that will be affected. Their data is not true. The routes that are unused, there are IR routes and VR routes. The IR routes are unused, abandoned, unsurveyed, not suitable for use at this present time, and they haven't been. They have no military traffic on them. But they are used, but that airspace is used in the calculation of presently affected airspace. Again, Pat Welch from the Air National Guard headquarters says in his comments about this, delete the discussion of the currency of IR route surveys in use. It doesn't add value to the discussion and could lead to demands to remove the routes from charting. They're not used, but they're using it in the calculation for this proposal. He also says, don't highlight their lack of use. Simply state that they don't provide sufficient capability for meeting the training requirements. My friends, that's a breach of integrity, and I'm embarrassed. This unused airspace that we're talking about right now is roughly 50% of that baseline square miles of coverage. Therefore, the proposed impact information is invalid. It should be invalidated, as is the discussion and conclusion of the viable alternatives. When we compare the Adirondack MOA in New York to the proposed Condor MOA in Maine, and look at the affected amount of airspace compared to already affected airspace, we've just invalidated that entire argument by having airspace thrown into this that's not even used. One other issue on the data, the noise data, as we've heard today, is based on an average. The noise data is only of F-15s, 2 engines, 2 Pratt & Whitney engines, but B-1 bombers, F-35s, would be allowed to fly here. B-1 bombers have 4 engines, roughly double the output of an F-15 engine, but we don't have any data on that, but they would be allowed to use this. Let's talk about safety. My experience is not only an F-15 instructor pilot, but also as the flight safety officer for an entire wing of F-15s, 72 airplanes. I was responsible for the management of that safety program. And when I say no significant impact, when I see no significant impact in this study, I'm appalled. It's irresponsible. First off, the airfield and controlled airspace used for Bethel, Beanfield up in Rangeley, Berlin, Central Maine, and Greenville would be compromised. The baseline data is invalid. It says that those airfields presently underlie special use airspace. That's not true. They're adjacent to it, but they do not underlie that airspace. Once again, falsifying the entire argument or the premise of the argument in the study. Let's look at the type of training. We're making a comparison between benign training at higher altitudes and now saying there's no significant difference in safety down at 500 feet with the radar locked onto another aircraft. The present low special use airspace is steady state, speed and altitude, one-way routes, defined entry and exit and turn points with fixed timing. The fighter aircraft's radar is generally in a search mode. In the proposed type of training, the altitudes, speeds are random. And the radar is generally in single target track, locked on the adversary aircraft. Visual lookout is highly focused through the little box in the heads-up display, trying to get the first visual pickup on the other aircraft. So, to think that these aircraft are going to be looking out for Alan and myself as we're flying out of Phillips or any float plane transiting the area, that's not going to happen. But the comparison of safety, in the report it says there's no significant impact, no difference than what's going on today. Visual lookout is highly focused. This type of focused training that's proposed is currently conducted in military exclusive airspace, meaning no civilian aircraft would be allowed in there. They're in warning areas and restricted areas. But we're going to open this up and try to mix civilian aircraft and military aircraft and expect that there's no significant impact in safety. That is totally false. Okay. There is no real-time data as to whether or not that MOA is hot. We can use a cell phone, but there's a lot of no coverage zones up in this neck of the woods, and somebody that's out on a pond trying to bring some fishermen back to Rangeley from a remote lake probably aren't going to have cell phone coverage, and the VHF, there aren't adequate repeaters up in this area to have any VHF coverage. So, once again, another falsehood in the report. I was really mostly appalled by the mishap data on table 3-2. It does not break out the drastic increase in mishap rates associated with low-level operations. It only covers the cumulative rates. You cannot equate medium altitude refueling and air-to-air intercepts in a somewhat benign, sterile environment to the operations and the mishap rates that will occur at low altitude in a very intense high to low intercept regime with low altitude defensive maneuvering. That mishap rate is not the same. That mishap rate is not covered in the report. So in conclusion, the EIS is wholly inadequate and fails to prove that no significant impact would occur with this proposal, while a cursory view of reality suggests something quite different. The detriment of this proposal to the people of Maine far outweighs the benefit to the Mass Air Guard. It must not go forward. Thank you for your time, and thanks for the work you guys are doing.